Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic peeps, to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, yeah, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between, including books, and we do talk a lot about books here. I say we, I mean me. You guys know what I'm saying. Alright, today's video, I was inspired by my friend Amy Noel over from Amy Noel Reads to do a top 10 most disturbing books I've read thus far list, because I just recently read Gone to See the Riverman by Christopher Triana, and everyone kept telling me how disturbing it was, and after reading it, it was good. I thought it was well written, but I thought, what the hell is wrong with me? Why am I not disturbed to the level everyone else is? Am I jaded? Have I just read more disturbing books than this? Like, what is wrong with me? So, Amy was like, I'm curious, Kelsi, what books do you think are disturbing? So, because of Amy, here we have the list of the most disturbing books I have read thus far. Let's go to the short intro, and when we come back, I will tell you guys about these disturbing, horrible books. Welcome back, guys! So I have a few notes over there, so if you see me kind of looking over, it's because I'm looking at my notes on the computer. I do think there is a difference between extreme books, disturbing books, and gross books. And I want to get that off my chest right away, because I do think a book can be extreme without making you feel disturbing. Disturbing books make me feel a certain way, and what I consider to be disturbing, it's basically books that convey a sense of bleakness in regards to the human condition or to the human race as a whole. A book that displays how atrocious and inhumane people can truly be. Basically a book that displays the lowest of lows of humanity. And those are usually books that stay with me after I have read them, that I think about for a long time after I read them. Some of these books are books that have made me angry, whereas other books that are not on the more disturbing side of the scale, they're kind of towards the least disturbing side of the scale of the list. Some of those are going to be zany, but have disturbing elements in them. Some are going to be more commercially known, others won't be. I have not read as much as some people, like my friend Olly, my friend Juan, my friend Alex. All of those people, whose channels I will link below, they have read a lot of disturbing books, and they've got some great lists about books that they've read, the top disturbing books. In fact, Juan has done projects about the most disturbing books with a number of booktubers. I was on a few of those in terms of, they were recommendation videos, and I gave my picks for most disturbing books. Again, I think everyone might have a different definition of what is disturbing, and I think that's okay. I think somebody might get disturbed by something in a book like Gone to See the Riverman, where somebody like me is like, nah, it was disturbing, but it wasn't like super disturbing to me. It wasn't comparable to some other books I have read in, the same vein. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into the list, and we will kind of go further into my thoughts as we go into each book. But I do want to say the official definition of disturbing, according to the dictionary, is causing feelings of worry, concern, or anxiety. I think that lines up with how I feel about the word disturbing and what I consider to be a disturbing book. Books that make me think long after I'm done reading them, books that make me just feel uneasy about what I just read. And I just feel uneasy for a long period of time. And extremely uneasy. Not just like a little feeling of unease. Like, it's an extreme feeling. Alright, so we're going to start at the top of the list, which is number 10. And to me, this is like the least disturbing on the scale of 10 to 1. So, 1 will be my most disturbing book. And again, people like Olly, people like Juan, people like Alex will have much different books on their list because they've read a lot more than me overall. So, I will say as well that I have an honorable mention, which is Cows. Cows is not on my list because I don't really consider it a super disturbing book. Are there disturbing elements in it? Yes. Cows is more of a gross book in my opinion, but I had to mention it here because there are some really disturbing elements in it, and I do feel like the majority of books on my list have something to say about humanity, some kind of bleak message or observation. I feel like Cows was trying to have some kind of message, but it didn't quite succeed in explaining it like some of the other books did, or at least the way the other books tried to. So, yeah, I just had to get that honorable mention out there. Alright, so number 10, it's a three-way tie, and these are almost just honorable mentions in a way, because again, there are a lot of books that are deemed disturbing that I have not read that probably would easily take the number 10 spot, but in terms of out of what I've read, these three are disturbing in ways, but not unreadable, like I think some other books on this list almost are. So The Troop is one by Nick Cutter. The Troop, I feel like, has some disturbing elements, some bleakness to it in terms of the message that it's trying to say about humankind and the government and different things like that. That differs from gross elements, which The Troop also has. It has some extreme and gross body horror, but again, I find disturbing to be other elements of the story that is basically about how we suck as humans, essentially, and how low humans really can go in terms of their treatment of others and what they do in their actions, etc., etc. The next pick for my number 10 tie is Brother by Anya Alborn, and I feel like Brother, there's some disturbing things in this about the relationship between the family members, the dynamics of the family. It's just off-putting. It makes you think, like, can this really happen? And if it can really happen, which I have no doubt that it could, then people really do suck. And that freaking sucks. And that is concerning, worrisome, and it makes me anxious. And it made me think a long time after reading. And I was like, wow, that was super disturbing in terms of its bleakness overall. Alright, and last but not least, in terms of the three-way number 10 spot tie, Falling Angel. And this one's an old school horror book. We're following a detective named Harry through New York, and he's trying to investigate some crimes, and some of them have an occult element to them, and there's a very disturbing thing that is revealed at the end about the relationships between some characters. I don't want to go into it at spoiler territory, but one big reveal is kind of disturbing, and you're like, ugh, that's gross and disturbing. But not gross in the sense of cows gross, it's just off-putting, disturbing. Bleh. Anyway, if you've read it, you might know what I mean. Those are really barely disturbing books, in my opinion, because I feel like they're more readable, as I said, than some of these others. Number 9. Toy Cemetery, and this is one of the books I mentioned that has some zaniness, some things that you can't take seriously. This is by William W. Johnstone, who is notoriously a batshit crazy writer in terms of his plots don't add up, his plots don't always make sense. Some of the things he writes are just laughable. However, in Toy Cemetery, there is this kind of child sex pornography ring element to the book that is quite disturbing. That is not a spoiler. It's talked about everywhere the book is talked about. I mean, Grady Hendrix basically spoiled the entire plot in his book, Paperbacks from Hell. So there are widely known elements to the story that everyone knows about, but they're disturbing. There are some scenes in this book that are just disturbing in terms of the way the characters act. Some relationships between the characters that should be a sacred relationship are very off-putting. And even though the book doesn't add up, and sometimes you just laugh and scoff at, like, the absurdity of it, other times you're just like, ew, like, I feel really weird about reading this. This is disturbing. This is off-putting. So in that case, I think it earns the number 9 spot. But again, it's not highly disturbing like number 1 would be for me. Number 8, Night in the Lonesome October. This is a book by Richard Lehman. And Richard Lehman, I think overall as an author, some of his work is just disturbing because of how sexualized his characters are. And it's almost to a point where you're like, are people really like this? Why did he write them like this? In a way, that's just disturbing in itself, by itself. It's not disturbing in as serious a way as some of these other books on my list, but it's disturbing nonetheless. Again, it's a lot about the characters and how they behave and their mentality. I definitely think Richard Lehman's not for everybody. And I feel like the ending of A Night in the Lonesome October, just the way some of the characters who are protagonists, the way they act is puzzling and disturbing and weird. And just their relationships to one another is weird and disturbing and puzzling. Is it zany? Yeah. Is it, for some people, enjoyable, intriguing read? I think so, yes, but in a disturbing way, and that's how it was for me. Alright, I can't even explain that book very well, but it's weird. This dude goes on walks, he starts peeping on people, there's a guy after him, crazy sex stuff, blah blah blah. It's Richard Lehman. Number 7 is Hellhound by Ken Greenhall. I love Hellhound, and I think the most disturbing part of the book is how cold and calculated the voice of the narrator, Baxter, is. Baxter is not a human narrator, he is a dog. So we are going along, we get to get a peek into his subconscious, we get to experience his thoughts on the human race and the humans in his life. But even outside of Baxter, there's another narrator, because it switches points of view, and we get his thoughts, and I don't like that narrator either. There's lots of stuff that happens in this book that is just hard to read. The movie is also disturbing. The movie Baxter is the name of the movie. It's a foreign film. I watched it for this past October in 2022, and yeah, that also captured the vibe of the novel quite well in terms of how cool and calculated and just kind of a psychopath Baxter as a dog comes off like, and it's captured in the movie quite well, just like it is in the book. So that was my number 7. Number 6, Geek Love by Katherine Dunn. This isn't disturbing in a traditional sense. I think it's more disturbing about the characters, their motivations, their actions, and it's a slow burn, so it's not as fast-paced as some other disturbing books. It doesn't make you feel as angry as some of the other books that are closer towards 1 on my list for me, but it just is off-putting, and I know I keep saying the word disturbing, but that's what this list is. It just makes you question how people are, how many twisted people exist on Earth, because I could see this being a real thing. Even though it is absurd, it's essentially about a family, a traveling family that runs their own carnival, and the husband and wife, they choose to breed their own freaks to ensure the longevity of this carnival. The mom and dad deciding to breed their own freaks, that's one disturbing thing, but there's plenty of disturbing things that their kids end up doing. So, it's just all very weird. Zany stuff, crazy stuff, over-the-top stuff happens in this novel, but it's a great book if you like character development and well-written characters, and the whole book itself is very well written, very beautifully written, has more of a literary style in terms of the writing style. Won't be for everybody, because again, it's a super slow burn in some ways, but in other ways, the family is so messed up, and reading that as you go, I feel like that is kind of what makes it entertaining, but also disturbing at the same time. The number 5 most disturbing book I've read thus far is Such Nice People. And this one, all I gotta say, is the shed scene. If you know, you know. If you don't, I don't know how you're gonna get your hands on this book. It's kind of rare. It is on archive.org, so you can read it there. There's other dark things in the book. In fact, its darkness overall, I feel, is part of why it's disturbing to me. But specifically the shed scene, for some reason, is very, very hard to read. And then the ending itself, it's just kind of wild. It is a slow burn, just like Geek Love, but I feel like it's even slower than Geek Love in that it kind of just takes a look at the family as they're going. One of the family members is kind of descending into madness, and not everyone notices 100%, but then things come to a head, and then there's the big climax near the end, and it's pretty wild. Next up, number 4, Endless Night by Richard Lehman. So another Richard Lehman on this list, and I feel like the most disturbing part of this book is the sheer grossness of the group of antagonists, and there's one antagonist that the book focuses on, and just the extreme detail of his thoughts and his actions are super, super off-putting, and the idea that somebody could be this despicable and gross is terrible. But I think what makes this a good read, if you can handle Richard Lehman and controversial and not really politically correct writing, I feel like Endless Night is a fast-paced read. It is a wild ride. You do root so hard for the protagonist because you do not want this group of antagonists, specifically the one main one, to get his hands on this protagonist. You don't want her to get captured. So Jody is her name, and the whole time you are so worried about Jody. That's another reason I think it adds to the disturbing element, because you know how terrible the main guy is, the main bad guy, and you just don't want her to fall victim to him. Yeah, basically that's what kind of made me feel super hardcore feelings during this book. Alright, next, number 3, Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. The violence and gore is next level, and so yes, it's extreme, but also just the level of bleakness in the whole book, about the AIDS epidemic that it does take a very strong look at, and just how cold a psychopath can be, a serial killer can be, and just the way the cannibalism and the sexual elements of this book is written, it's just so flippant in a way, like, oh, matter of fact. That in itself is disturbing. I would say it's all three things at once. It's gross, it's extreme, and it's disturbing, all in different ways. It definitely deserves to be on this list. All right, number 2, The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. And I do think this is one of the books that would be on most people's top disturbing books list. I feel like because of this book, it's the reason why I didn't find Going to See the Riverman as disturbing as most other people. Because once you read The Girl Next Door and what my number 1 pick is going to be, then you're like, I can almost read anything and won't be ever as disturbed as I was when I read this and the other. That's my number 1. So the callousness of the adult in the situation in this book, essentially we've got these kids and this adult woman. They all start torturing these 2 girls. And actually, the girl is a family member of the adult and some of the kids involved. And just, I think how quickly this group mentality develops where they're okay with this, where they're okay with this torture. It just has a very, very sad message about the human race and how terrible people can be. And why? Just, we don't even know, like, why these kids are so easily influenced. We don't even know why this adult stoops to this level. We get, like, peeks into her psyche, into what has, like, kind of made her against young girls and her niece in particular. But, I don't know. Just, even without explanation, it's disturbing. And the level of sexual violence in this book is horrific to the next level. You just hate the antagonist so much in this book, too. Loathe, really. Nothing could come close to the feelings I had while reading this book. I did tear up at parts. It's just such a hard read, and I would not recommend it lightly. Not at all. And it's based on a true story, which makes it even more disturbing than if it was pure 100% fiction. And number 1. Also a book that's based on a true story, slightly. Same true story, actually, that The Girl Next Door is based on. My number 1 is Let's Go Play at the Adams. And this is about a babysitter who is actually captured and tortured by the kids she's babysitting. And the mentality of the children is the most disturbing thing about this for me. And the message that the author is trying to convey about there's no hope, there's no love, this is like a game, and how easily people can resort to violence, and how they can make violence like a game. That is so disturbing too. Just, I can't even... I should do a disturbing movies list because that's almost easier. I have a lot more disturbing movies I could talk about, but when it comes to books, no other books made me as angry as Let's Go Play at the Adams and The Girl Next Door. And I was so angry at the kids. I hated those kids in Let's Go Play at the Adamses so much, and also hated the kids as well as the adult in The Girl Next Door. And again, because they're based on true stories, or a true story, singular, that makes it even worse in my opinion. And I don't know, they're both very different books, so if you can handle disturbing, they both say what they're trying to say in different ways. I feel like Let's Go Play at the Adams, it made me more angry because of the way it ended versus the way The Girl Next Door ended. And it's not giving anything away. You would have to read it to see what I mean. But they're both, I think, disturbing in just a slightly different way. So, yeah, that would have to be my top 2. And because of those freaking books, that is why Gone to See the Riverman did not affect me like it did everyone else. That is why I'm a psychopath now, and I'm like, I can read books and not be that disturbed because I was already freaking mentally messed up by Let's Go Play at the Adams, like by The Girl Next Door. Now I feel like I could literally read anything and handle it in a way. I don't know what this is about me, but it's kind of scary. But anyway, guys, what are your most disturbing reads ever? And also, why do you think it's important to read disturbing books? Are you confused to why we as readers actually go through with reading a disturbing book? I think it's perfectly okay if you don't want to read a disturbing book. I do think it's important to read trigger warnings if there is anything in horror that might affect you, especially with a book that is notorious for being extreme or disturbing. For instance, Gone to See the Riverman, make sure you check. Don't just take my word for it and think because Kelsi could handle it, I can handle it. No, no, no. Check content warnings 100%, for sure. I always advise that. I never like to give them specifically on my channel because I do feel like you get into spoiler territory. I just advise people look it up if they have concerns or questions or fears. So, essentially, I do want to link a video below. My friend Olly gave a great analysis of why people even read disturbing books, why it's important, why some people choose to do it, whereas others choose not to. I want to link that below so you guys can check out his thoughts, because I think he really dove into this discussion so well, and it's a very short video for such a heavy topic, and he does a great job at kind of breaking it down and talking about why he reads disturbing books. And I feel like sometimes disturbing books, those are the books that affect you the most and make you think the most, and make you really ponder on, you know, our human race, and why some people act the way they do, why maybe there's no explanation for why some people are the way they are. It's kind of a delve into psychology in some ways, and I just think it's also important to confront these very personal fears that we have about the human condition, the human race, and about our experiences living through life. So I think it's a safe way for some people to approach that and take a look at that and examine that and have a discussion about that in their own minds, and maybe with others if it's a book club read, like Gone to See the Riverman is for me. And like, I had a book club discussion about The Girl Next Door, and I wrote a really long blog post about Let's Go Play at the Adams and my very, very intricate thoughts about both books. And I will link both of those things below, my blog post about Let's Go Play and my review, which has spoilers, about The Girl Next Door. So again, all of these books disturb me in one way, shape, or form, but I know my list might vary very differently from you guys' lists, and I want to hear about it. So comment below, like I said, but thank you guys for spending this video with me. I appreciate your time as always. And also a special shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. You guys are helping me keep my channel going to the level that it's going right now. You're helping me with my subscription costs and continue to put out quality content. It's you guys' support that helps. And those of you who just watch and like and comment, that still means just as much to me too, so thank you guys, because I appreciate any and all support. But for this time, that is it for me. Till next time, you guys know what you can do. Keep on killing it. Bye guys. I hope you have a non-disturbing day, by the way, or evening. Bye.